The second part of this anime begins by showing Jinwoo visiting his mother in the hospital. While accompanying his mother, Jinwoo seems to be studying the recipe for the elixir of life, which he obtained after defeating Cerberus. At that moment, Jinwoo learns that 3 ingredients are needed to make the elixir of life, all of which are located inside the Demon King's castle. Jinwoo also realizes that with his current abilities, entering the Demon King's castle would be akin to seeking death. Therefore, Jinwoo resolves to become stronger so that he can gather the 3 ingredients to heal his mother. The following day, Jinwoo decides to accept Jinho's offer, but with one condition, that he only wants to partner with Jinho on the missions they will undertake. Upon hearing this, Jinho is shocked because it is impossible to carry out a level C dungeon mission with just the 2 of them, as the requirement to enter a level C dungeon is to have a team of 8 people. However, Jinwoo responds that they could recruit a few people just to meet the member count, as Dong-suk and his team did. Jinho initially feels hesitant because it is quite risky and very dangerous, but Jinwoo persuades him by saying they can convince his father to choose Jinho as the guild master if they never fail in all their attack missions. At the same time, Heian is seen training alone in a sports stadium. While Heian is resting, a talent scout from Eugene Construction approaches her. Meanwhile, Jinho's father, who is also the CEO of Eugene Construction named Mr. Yu, is seen explaining to Jinho the role of the Hunter Association and all the hunters involved in gathering resources from within the dungeons. Mr. Yu also explains about the top 5 guilds in the country, namely the Hunters Guild, White Tiger Guild, Famed Guild, and Knights Guild. These 5 guilds are said to almost monopolize all the resources in the dungeons for their own benefit. Therefore, Mr. Yu cannot remain silent in the face of this situation because he is unwilling to hand over resources that can ensure the survival of all the people in the country to those who only know how to use violence. Mr. Yu also believes that those valuable resources should be directly managed by their company, which has long supported the country's development. Upon learning that, Jinho could not defy his father's orders and reluctantly agreed to Mr. Yu's plan to establish a guild and make his older brother the leader, then recruit S-rank hunters. The next day, Jinho is seen training to complete his daily quest as a routine to earn points. After he successfully completes the daily quest, Jinho receives a random gift box, where he hopes that he gets the key to open the instant dungeon so he can undertake missions to level up. But unexpectedly, Jinho receives a bingo card, which is completely useless. After that, Jinho appears disappointed because now he can only wait for notifications from Jinho or the Hunters Association to undertake the latest dungeon mission. On his way home, Jinho receives a text message from the Hunters Association, which is recruiting for a level D portal mission. Although he cannot fight alone in this mission, Jinho decides to participate because he does not want to waste time saving his mother's life. Elsewhere, Sung, who has lost his arm, also unexpectedly receives the same text message, indicating that the Hunters Association might be short of hunters for this urgent mission. Song had been considering retirement after the double dungeon incident, but he changed his mind and is grateful he survived the incident. Knowing that many hunters died in the double dungeon mission, Song decides to contribute more by continuing to be a hunter. Meanwhile, Kim also receives a similar text message and appears torn between participating in the mission or staying at home with his family. At that moment, his wife is anxious because Kim's last mission caused many hunters to lose their lives, but Kim says they need a lot of money for their children's school fees, so he decides to participate in the mission. On the other hand, Yuno is seen venting his frustration on his fellow S-rank hunter named Choi, because he deliberately made Yuno appear in a TV interview. However, Choi argues that it was all under Mr. Go's orders, as Mr. Go believes Yuno is the right person for the image of a strong hunter. Upon learning that, Yuno chooses not to prolong their argument, and instead asks Choi why he called him to that place. After that, Choi informs Yuno about Eugene Construction's intention to establish a guild. Apparently, Yuno is already aware of this as they also intend to recruit hunters below his level. Knowing that Choi did not want to discuss Eugene Construction with him, and Yuno firmly asks Choi what he really wants to talk to him about. At the same time, Juhee is seen talking to her mother on the phone, during which her mother belittles her, despite Juhee being a quite talented B-rank healer. Juhee, frustrated because her mother always belittles her abilities and decides everything for her, then snaps at her mother and says that her mother should not interfere in her affairs because from now on, she will take care of her own life. After that, Juhee also receives an invitation to participate in the Level D portal mission, and she decides to join the mission. Soon after that, after Yuno leaves Choi's room, he bumps into Haein, who is about to meet Choi. Haein then goes to Choi and informs him about someone from Eugene Construction who intends to recruit her. At that moment, Haein explains to Choi that Eugene Construction wants to establish a guild and specifically requested her to be the guild master. Upon learning that, Choi assumes that Haein declined the offer from Eugene Construction because she reported it to him. Choi then looks relieved because Haein rejected the offer and chose to remain loyal to him. Meanwhile, Yuno, who is at a bar, is still thinking about Choi's words regarding his determination to conquer Jeju Island after their failure a few years ago. Choi apparently has not forgotten about the incident that killed so many hunters on Jeju Island, which is still closed off by the government because it is too dangerous. Choi also expresses his desire to Yuno to collaborate and gather more comrades to conquer the island. Additionally, Choi mentions their fellow S-rank hunters who have fought tirelessly to defeat the monsters on the island. The following day, as Song is on his way to the designated location, he accidentally meets Jinwoo, who is also heading there. Song is surprised to see that Jinwoo's leg is fully healed, but he assumes that there is a high-level healer among the hunters who came to help him. Nevertheless, Song is pleased to meet Jinwoo again on an attack mission because he is a promising young hunter for the future. Shortly after, Song and Jinwoo finally arrive at the location, but they are shocked to find that some hunters involved in the double dungeon incident are also participating in this mission. Besides Juhee, Kim and Chung-ho are also there, but they both seem reluctant to greet Jinwoo and Song because they choose to leave first. Not long after, the atmosphere suddenly becomes awkward, but Juhee tries to break the ice by asking about Jinwoo's condition. She seems happy that Jinwoo has fully recovered. In fact, Jinwoo has grown taller and looks much fitter than before. Shortly afterward, a car suddenly arrives at the location, and 3 prisoners get out of the vehicle. They turn out to be the substitute prisoners who will join the assault mission under the supervision of Tae-sik, a B-rank hunter. Due to the limited number of hunters in the area, the Hunters Association has no choice but to send these C-rank prisoners to participate in the mission, promising a reduction in their sentences if they successfully complete it. At that moment, Jinwoo, who is suspicious of the 3 prisoners, then tells Juhee to reconsider participating in this mission, but she refuses and insists on continuing the mission with him. After that, Tae-sik approaches them and asks who will be the captain for this mission. Song then requests permission from Jinwoo to be the captain, and without hesitation, he agrees. Song then bows to Jinwoo and apologizes for his failure in their last mission, where they lost so many hunters from their team because he was unable to protect them. However, Song also thanks Jinwoo because, thanks to him, 6 others survived, and Song represents them to thank Jinwoo directly. Since the other hunters have no objections to Song offering himself as captain, they finally proceed to enter the dungeon to undertake the mission. Inside the dungeon, they seem very enthusiastic about exterminating the magic beasts attacking them. Knowing that Jinwoo has become stronger since they last met, Song praises him, and even Juhee compliments Jinwoo for becoming stronger, although he tries to remain humble. Meanwhile, without their knowledge, Tae-sik has been quietly observing Jinwoo for some time but then instructs them to continue their journey through the cave. At the end of the cave, they are faced with 3 different paths, one of which leads to the dungeon's boss location. At that moment, Tae-sik suggests that they split up, and Song agrees. While Tae-sik and the prisoners choose the rightmost path, Jinwoo decides to take the leftmost path because his intuition tells him that it leads to the dungeon's boss location. Since the other 2 paths have already been chosen by the other teams, Kim and Chung-ho decide to take the middle path. Along the way, Kim and Chung-ho are confronted by the magic beasts that continuously attack them, but they are able to easily defeat the magic beasts. Kim then says that he will bow and apologize to Jinwoo if he manages to survive and complete this mission. All this time, Kim has been harboring guilt towards Jinwoo because he chose to run away and leave Jinwoo to save himself. Although Kim chose to flee because he was thinking about his family waiting for him at home, in reality, he had become a coward who left his fellow hunter to die. Upon hearing that, Chung-ho asks if they will receive forgiveness from Jinwoo, but Kim replies that Jinwoo might never forgive them. Even so, they still have to apologize to him. Therefore, Lee offers Tae-sik a cash sum of 3 billion won to kill the 3 men so he can get justice for his daughter. Apparently, Lee knows that outsiders will not know what happens inside the dungeon, so he pleads with Tae-sik to kill the 3 men during a mission inside the dungeon. In the present, Kim and Chung-ho, While walking along, unexpectedly find Tae-sik, who has already killed 2 of the prisoners participating in the mission. Tae-sik had accepted Lee's offer to kill the 3 men who assaulted Lee's daughter. As Tae-sik is about to kill the last man, Kim and Chung-ho suddenly appear because the 2 paths they took were connected. However, Tae-sik does not seem bothered by the presence of the 2 hunters, as he then kills the man and walks toward Kim and Chung-ho while holding his knife. Meanwhile, Jinwoo and his fellow hunters, who are exploring the other side of the cave, suddenly hear the screams of Kim and Chung-ho, so they rush to follow them. Upon arriving, they find the 3 prisoners brutally murdered, while Chung-ho lies dead in a pool of blood. On the other hand, Jinwoo discovers Kim, who is dying from severe injuries, and instructs Joo-hee to heal him immediately. Upon examining Kim's condition, Song quickly realizes that they weren't attacked by the magic beasts, as their wounds were caused by a very sharp knife. Furthermore, whoever attacked them deliberately avoided fatal wounds, inflicting more injuries to let Kim and Chung-ho bleed out. At that moment, the dying Kim tells Joo-hee to stop healing him, believing he doesn't have much time left. However, Jinwoo urges him to stay alive, reminding Kim that he has a family waiting for him at home. After seeing Kim dying before him, Jinwoo is deeply shaken because he wants Kim to live so he can hate him without feeling burdened. Upon hearing Jinwoo's words, Kim sincerely apologizes to Jinwoo and expressing deep regret for abandoning him to die. After apologizing to Jinwoo, Kim passes away peacefully. After that, Song and Joo-hee look saddened by Kim's death, but soon after, Tae-sik appears with the intent to kill Joo-hee. Fortunately, Jinwoo notices Tae-sik's presence and manages to deflect the attack before he can harm Joo-hee. At that moment, Tae-sik seems impressed with Jinwoo for being able to block his move. Song then asks Tae-sik why he killed Kim and the others despite being a representative of the Hunters Association. Instead of answering Song's question, Tae-sik plans to concoct a story to cover up what really happened in the dungeon. Initially, Tae-sik intends to claim they were all killed by the magic beasts. However, he decides to alter his story, creating a scenario where the 3 prisoners killed the hunters, and then tried to kill him while he was busy fighting the dungeon's boss. Since Tae-sik is a level B hunter, he could easily defeat the 3 prisoners, making him the sole survivor of the mission. Realizing Tae-sik plans to kill them, Song takes the initiative to fight Tae-sik and tells Jinwoo to step back, thinking that he is still as weak as before. Song then takes Kim's sword and asks Joo-hee to apply physical enhancement magic to him for self-defense since his level is lower than Tae-sik's. On the other hand, Tae-sik seems to underestimate Song's abilities because he is a mage-type hunter, even though Song is quite skilled with the sword. Tae-sik also belittles Song for being an old and disabled man. However, after receiving physical enhancement magic from Joo-hee, Song can match Tae-sik's speed, although Jinwoo thinks it is still not enough to defeat Tae-sik. Despite Song being able to cast spells and launch quick and accurate attacks, he appears overwhelmed by Tae-sik's relentless assaults until Tae-sik finally manages to wound Song. Fortunately, Joo-hee quickly heals the wound, which irritates Tae-sik and he prepares to attack Joo-hee. Upon seeing that, Song quickly launches an attack to protect Joo-hee, but Tae-sik anticipates the move and counterattacks repeatedly, inflicting a fatal wound on Song. Seeing Song gravely injured, Joo-hee tries to heal him, but unexpectedly, she has already exhausted her healing power. After that, Tae-sik approaches Song, ready to kill him. Which surprisingly, Song still has enough strength to attack Tae-sik with his magic. Although the strategy is quite clever, Tae-sik is not a weak opponent and easily dodges the attack. Tae-sik seems somewhat impressed by the tactic, but he is already fed up with Song, so he prepares to kill him. Fortunately, Jinwoo manages to block the attack that's saving Song's life. Realizing that Jinwoo has been able to block his attacks twice, Tae-sik is shocked because Jinwoo is supposed to be a level E hunter, who should not be able to anticipate his attacks. Tae-sik then assumes that Jinwoo has undergone a second awakening and hiding his true power. Upon hearing this, Song and Joo-hee are shocked, thinking that Jinwoo must have undergone a second awakening after the incident in the double dungeon. At the same time, Tae-sik recalls that Jinwoo is the level E hunter he visited in the hospital some time ago, although his appearance and demeanor are now very different. Tae-sik is also puzzled about how Jinwoo could have survived the double dungeon incident, especially since his evaluation score was only 10 points when he checked his condition in the hospital. However, Tae-sik decides not to dwell on it, and prepares to attack Jinwoo with 2 knives. Before they fight, Jinwoo asks Tae-sik why he killed them, and Tae-sik replies that he was only helping a victim's family who wanted revenge. After all, the prisoners had committed murder and shown no remorse, so he decided to help the victim's family get justice. However, Jinwoo was not referring to the prisoners but to Kim and Chung-ho, as they were just doing their jobs as hunters. Additionally, Jinwoo realizes that Tae-sik intentionally made Kim and Chung-ho suffer until death because he could have killed them immediately if Tae-sik had only intended to silence them. Upon hearing that, Tae-sik grins cunningly, acknowledging that Jinwoo has discovered the truth. The scene then shifts to some time ago, when Lee begged Tae-sik to kill the men who assaulted his daughter. At that time, Tae-sik told Lee that killing them was a trivial matter for him. Tae-sik then explained that he was a level B hunter sought after by many large associations, but he chose to join the Hunters Association, which paid him a low salary because he preferred killing humans over killing magic beasts in the dungeon. In the present, Tae-sik immediately launches an attack first with his knives, but Jinwoo matches his speed. They engage in a fierce battle, making Song and Joo-hee realize that Jinwoo is no longer the level E hunter they knew, as he now possesses the speed and skills comparable to a level B hunter like Tae-sik. The only difference between Jinwoo and Tae-sik is their experience in facing high-level enemies, as Tae-sik is far more experienced than Jinwoo. Realizing this, Tae-sik tries to leverage his experience in battle to defeat Jinwoo. He also acknowledges that Jinwoo is a formidable opponent, and as a result, Tae-sik unintentionally releases his killing intent, which Jinwoo can clearly perceive. At the same time, Jinwoo suddenly receives a notification from the system indicating that Tae-sik is a target he must kill. Apparently, the system reacts to the killing intent emitted by his opponent, which also gives Jinwoo another reason to kill Tae-sik. After receiving this notification, Jinwoo prepares to attack Tae-sik and successfully injures him with his poison dagger. Initially, Tae-sik is overwhelmed by Jinwoo's quick and precise attacks, but he then activates his invisibility skill to hide his presence. Tae-sik is very confident in his invisibility skill, as not many assassin-type hunters possess this ability. Additionally, Tae-sik has ensured that he has killed everyone who knew about his invisibility skill. After that, Tae-sik launches a series of attacks and manages to inflict fatal injuries on Jinwoo. Tae-sik believes he has incapacitated Jinwoo, but surprisingly, Jinwoo is able to heal his wounds instantly. Tae-sik is astonished by this, as he has never heard of a combat-type hunter who can use healing magic, which makes him realize that Jinwoo is a dangerous opponent. On the other hand, Jinwoo releases his killing intent and reveals that he has killed people before. Upon learning this, Song assumes that Jinwoo must have been forced to make some very difficult choices, leaving him with no other solution but to take someone's life to save his own. However, Tae-sik doesn't seem to care about this and begins to attack using his invisibility skill. He is confident that Jinwoo cannot detect his presence. However, unbeknownst to him, Jinwoo's killing intent is a special skill that allows him to sense Tae-sik's presence, enabling him to successfully stab him. In his final moments before death, Tae-sik asks Jinwoo about his true identity because Jinwoo can use healing magic, despite being an assassin-type hunter who shouldn't be able to use magic. Jinwoo replies that he is also trying to find out about that, so he can't give a definitive answer. After successfully completing the mission by killing Tae-sik, Jinwoo receives a rune stone as a reward. Jinwoo then acknowledges that his strength is no longer the same as before. However, Jinwoo also realizes that every time he levels up and becomes stronger, he feels that a part of his body is gradually deteriorating. After that, Joo-hee and Song thank Jinwoo for saving their lives, but Jinwoo tells them to leave first because he will defeat the dungeon's boss and complete the mission. Song and Joo-hee initially want to help Jinwoo, but given Jinwoo's current strength, they choose to follow his instructions. Sometime later, Jinchul arrives at the location after receiving a report about the murders committed by Tae-sik in the dungeon. Jinchul had long suspected that Tae-sik was somewhat suspicious, but he never expected that he was a cold-blooded killer. When Jinchul meets the three survivors, he is surprised to find that Jinwoo is one of them who survived Tae-sik's attack. Jinchul then asks who among them managed to kill Tae-sik. At first, Jinwoo initially intends to tell the truth, but surprisingly, Song firmly states that he was the one who killed Tae-sik. However, Jinchul doubts Song's claim because he is a level C hunter, but Song explains that he managed to kill Tae-sik with the help of Joo-hee, a level B healer. Although Jinchul still doubts Song's statement, He chooses not to interrogate them further, as he needs to write his report. After that, Jinwoo realizes that Jinchul is a level A hunter, whom he can't possibly defeat with his current strength. So he feels grateful that Song and Joo-hee kept the truth from Jinchul. Shortly afterward, Song said to Jinwoo that he must have a strong reason for hiding his true power. Therefore, Song decided to keep the truth from Jinchul, especially since Jinwoo had also saved his life, making him want to repay the favor to Jinwoo. A few hours later, Lee finally turned himself in and confessed that he had asked Tae-sik to kill the 3 prisoners. The case was eventually closed, and the survivors were not punished as they were only defending themselves when Tae-sik tried to kill them. That night, Joo-hee told Jinwoo that Jinwoo had changed a lot and become stronger, while she had not made any progress at all. Jinwoo simply replied that he had gone through a lot since the double dungeon incident, and that everyone's experiences are different. Joo-hee then revealed to Jinwoo that she was too scared despite having the qualifications of a level B healer. For this reason, Joo-hee always took on level D or level E missions until she eventually met Jinwoo, an E-rank hunter. When she first got to know Jinwoo, Joo-hee thought that Jinwoo was too much trouble because he always got injured during missions. However, Joo-hee gradually realized that Jinwoo had a strong determination to survive, which impressed her. Shortly after, Joo-hee said they should have dinner together, but then she handed a mana crystal to Jinwoo, indicating that she had decided to retire. She also added that she would return to her hometown and asked Jinwoo to visit her hometown if he had some free time. Upon hearing that, Jinwoo smiled and promised that he would visit there sometime as he took the mana crystal. Sometime later, Jinwoo met with Jinchul, who still doubted Song's statement about the person who had killed Tae-sik. Jinchul assumed that Jinwoo was the one who had killed Tae-sik, even though it seemed unlikely because he was a level E hunter, while Tae-sik was a level B hunter. Therefore, Jinchul concluded that Jinwoo might have experienced a second awakening. However, Jinchul didn't want to dwell on that for now, and instead reminded Jinwoo about the incident that killed Dong-suk and his team some time ago, in which the only survivors were Jinwoo and Jinho. Jinchul then revealed that Dong-suk was the brother of Dong-su, an S-level hunter who often carried out missions abroad. Dong-su might have known about Dong-suk's death and could now be targeting Jinwoo and the other survivor. Regardless of what actually happened inside the dungeon, Dong-su only knew that his brother was dead and Jinwoo had survived. So he would surely conclude that Jinwoo was involved in Dong-suk's death. Moreover, as an S-level hunter, Dong-su was not bound by the law because his existence was both a miracle and a disaster. After that, Jinchul warned that Dong-su, sooner or later, would come to kill Jinwoo. Not only that, Jinchul also suggested that Jinwoo should leave the country with his family for their safety because it was highly unlikely for Jinwoo to defeat Dong-su, whose level was far above his. Upon learning that, Jinwoo thought that his reason for becoming stronger increased by 1 more, so he was determined to continue honing his abilities and increasing his level. In the following days, Jinwoo seemed to be preparing to carry out a level C mission with Jinho and several hunters selected by Jinho as their team members. Because Jinwoo only wanted to undertake the mission with Jinho, he recruited several hunters who still held hunter licenses but couldn't carry out missions for various reasons or had personal issues. Jinho also recruited injured hunters, alcoholics, and even underage hunters. Jinho said that according to the applicable law, they were allowed to recruit underage hunters because, in any case, they were the awakeners and had hunter licenses. Apparently, one of the hunters recruited by Jinho was a high school girl named Songyi, who had an E-level hunter license but had never been on a mission. After that, Jinho explained to Songyi and the others to wait outside the gate, while he and Jinho would enter the dungeon. At that moment, one of the hunters asked if they really just needed to wait outside and would receive 3 million won after the mission was completed. Jinho confirmed it, but he emphasized to Songyi and the others to keep it secret from anyone. If any of them leaked it to outsiders, then Jinho would demand 10 times the compensation amount as per the contract they had signed. While Jinho explained some rules to the other hunters, Jinho then took out the rune stone he obtained after killing Tae-sik. The rune stone turned out to grant him the ability to vanish like Tae-sik. Shortly afterward, Jinho appeared to be ready to undertake the mission as he was wearing the latest armor. Upon seeing that, Jinho immediately told Jinho to take off the armor because it would only hinder him. After that, Jinho struggled to get up because the armor was very heavy, so he pleaded with Jinho to help him stand. Although Jinwoo told him to take off all the armor attributes, Jinwoo insisted on wearing his helmet, and Jinwoo let him wear the helmet. While Jinwoo and Jinwoo undertook the mission inside the dungeon, some hunters seemed to underestimate them because they were only level D and level E hunters who would waste their lives trying to conquer a level C dungeon. On the other hand, Jinwoo's younger sister named Gina seemed to be in her classroom worrying about her classmate who skipped school that day. Surprisingly, Sung-yi was Gina's classmate, and instead of going to school, she joined Jinwoo's attacking team. An hour later, Jinwoo appeared to run out of the dungeon, and they thought he was escaping from enemies. Unexpectedly, when Jinwoo walked out of the dungeon, the gates slowly began to disappear, indicating that they had defeated the dungeon's boss. At that moment, Sung-yi and the other hunters were stunned to learn that Jinwoo and Jinwoo were able to conquer a level C dungeon in just 1 hour. Whereas an attacking team with all level C hunters usually took more than 2 hours to defeat the dungeon's boss. They became even more impressed because Jinwoo and Jinwoo intended to conquer 3 level C dungeons in a day, which actually gave them the opportunity to earn 9 million won in a day just by relaxing outside the dungeon. The following days, Jinwoo and Jinwoo continued their missions inside the dungeon, where Jinwoo was tasked with collecting mana crystals and magic stones, while Jinwoo disposed of their enemies and defeated the dungeon's boss. When Jinwoo managed to collect a large number of valuable mana crystals and magic stones, Jinwoo drastically leveled up, even gaining new abilities that greatly benefited him in battles. After that, Jinwoo became even more excited because he was determined to become stronger. During their rest, Jinwoo wondered if he could conquer the demon castle with his rapidly developing abilities, where Jinwoo assumed that his strength might now be above that of a level B hunter but had not reached level A yet, so he decided to postpone his intention to conquer the demon castle for now. Shortly after, Jinwoo received a notification about a job change quest, and he seemed curious about the quest. A few days later, Sungmin, the chief of the White Tiger Guild's 2nd Division Management Department, was surprised to learn that the bid for the level C gate had become very expensive because a team had spent 150 million won just to conquer the level C gate. His subordinate named Kiko informed him about the attacking team led by Jinwoo, which had recently managed to conquer quite a few level C gates. Kiko also explained that Jinwoo was the second son of Eugene Construction's chairman, indicating that he had enough money to bid for the level C gate at twice the market price. Sungmin initially thought that Jinwoo was just a wealthy young man who wanted to have fun by squandering his father's money. But soon after that, Sungmin found Jinwoo's name on Jinwoo's team member list, and he immediately learned that Jinwoo was a level E hunter who survived 3 recent major incidents. First, the double dungeon incident. Second, the total annihilation incident of Dongsuk's attacking team. And the last was the incident of the deaths of the prisoners and hunters killed by Tae-sik. At that moment, Sungmin assumed that Jinwoo might have experienced a second awakening, so he decided to recruit him into the White Tiger Association. After that, Sungmin and Kiko went to one of the level C gate locations and found Jinwoo's attacking team members relaxing outside the gate. Seeing their arrival, Sung-yi immediately warned them not to approach. Sungmin was immediately surprised after realizing that Jinwoo and Jinwoo chose to carry out the mission alone and even left their team members waiting outside the gate, which actually violated the rules. However, Sungmin didn't want to make an issue out of it and chose to leave. Shortly afterward, Jinwoo and Jinwoo came out of the gate and successfully completed their mission, where Jinwoo said he had urgent business the next day, so he asked Jinwoo to take the day off. Luckily, the level C gate they had already booked could be kept for 2 days, so Jinwoo decided to take a day off. The scene then shifted to Choi experiencing a nightmare about the horrific incident that occurred on Jeju Island a few years ago. That night, Sungmin deliberately approached Jinwoo and introduced himself to him. After that, they both went to a cafe where Sungmin openly expressed his intention to recruit Jinwoo. Sungmin even confidently stated that the White Tiger would pay him twice as much as what Eugene Construction offered. Even if Jinwoo had certain conditions, Sungmin said he would try hard to meet those requirements. Upon hearing the offer, Jinwoo asked Sungmin if he would provide the White Tiger Association building worth 50 billion won to him. Sungmin looked astonished when Jinwoo mentioned that the offer from Eugene Construction to him was a building worth 30 billion. Upon learning that, Sungmin instantly felt embarrassed because he never expected Eugene Construction to offer such a fantastic value. Sungmin then said that he would discuss it with his superiors, but Jinwoo replied that he was not interested in his offer at all, and coldly asked if Sungmin had been investigating him secretly. Jinwoo even used his invisibility skill and threatened Sungmin to explain everything. Knowing that Jinwoo had experienced a second awakening and had an invisibility skill, Sungmin was not surprised that Eugene Construction paid Jinwoo such a fantastic price. Sungmin then explained that he accidentally found out about Jinwoo and his team because they had monopolized the Level C gate for some time. As a result, the White Tiger Association had difficulty booking Level C gates to train their new recruits, so they could not assign the new recruits to carry out missions. Upon learning that, Jinwoo appeared before Sungmin again, saying that the situation would last for a while because he was pursuing mission targets. However, Jinwoo then offered 3 Level C gates they had booked for 300 million won. Upon hearing that, Sungmin tried to negotiate by offering 200 million won because the mana crystals and the magic gems inside the Level C dungeon were worth at least 200 million won. Unexpectedly, Jinwoo immediately agreed to the price and told Sungmin to transfer the money to Jinwoo's bank account. After making the deal with Sungmin, Jinwoo then provided a healing potion to heal the wounds on Sungmin's face. Upon learning that, Sungmin said that Jinwoo might have placed trust in him, but Jinwoo replied that Sungmin must keep everything about him, including his skills, secret. After Jinwoo left, Sungmin then told Kiko that Jinwoo was much stronger than they imagined. The next day, Jinwoo received a phone call from Jinho informing him that he had received 600 million won from Sungmin transferred to his bank account last night. Jinho then asked Jinwoo about it, but he replied that it was a trade secret. On the other hand, Sungmin looked surprised when Kiko informed him about the drastic drop in the market price of Level C gates after Jinwoo sold 3 Level C gates to them. Sungmin then received a text message from Jinwoo telling him to stop investigating him. Although he felt annoyed for failing to recruit Jinwoo and being deceived by him, he felt somewhat relieved because he managed to get Jinwoo's phone number. Meanwhile, Jinwoo decided to go to a remote area to carry out a job change quest. After deciding to accept the mission, surprisingly, a gate appeared in front of him, and Jinwoo immediately walked in. Jinwoo finally arrived at a dungeon that looked like a castle, where he was notified that he could not use potions and condition recovery there, and he could only leave the dungeon after completing the mission. Shortly after, Jinwoo faced a knight in armor with strength equal to him. Jinwoo initially struggled to penetrate the knight's defense, but he remembered his fight against Kasaka, so he could find the knight's weakness and defeat him. However, Jinwoo's struggle was not over because several other armored knights appeared and prepared to attack him. On the other hand, Jinho was seen having dinner with Mr. Yu and his older brother, Jinwoo Sung. At that moment, Mr. Yu asked about the progress of the Hunters Association formed by Jinwoo Sung some time ago, where Jinwoo Sung said that he failed to recruit 2 Level S hunters in South Korea. Nevertheless, he was negotiating with other Level S hunters in Europe and the Middle East and felt confident that they would join his guild because he had offered them a very high salary. Jinwoo Sung then turned to Jinho and said he knew what he was doing. Jinwoo Sung added that he didn't care about anything Jinho was doing at the moment, and told Jinho not to interfere with him. Upon hearing that, Jinho could only bow his head in front of his father and his older brother, thinking to himself that he would succeed in his goal because Jinho was very strong. Returning to Jinho, who managed to defeat the armored knights, but he was then surprised by the appearance of an assassin with invisibility skill and also a wizard attacking him with glittering magic. It reminded him of 3 previous battles where he had to face Kasaka with his impenetrable shell, Taesik with his invisibility skill, and one of Dong-suk's team members with flash magic ability. At that moment, Jinho realized that this mission was much more difficult than he anticipated. Knowing that his enemies kept coming, Jinho quickly used his strength to fight the knights, his perception to counter the assassins, and his agility to face the archers. He realized that he couldn't defeat the knights without strength, and if he lowered his perception, he couldn't detect the assassins with invisibility skill. However, the bigger problem was the magicians because they needed to be dealt with intelligence, and Jinho hadn't increased his intelligence much, so his mana was insufficient. Realizing that his fatigue was starting to accumulate, Jinho was determined to finish the fight quickly before he ran out of energy. Fortunately, Jinho managed to defeat his enemies and obtained invisible protective gear that wouldn't change his physical appearance or hinder his movement. In addition, Jinho also obtained several items and gold coins, and his fatigue had fully recovered. Jinho then moved forward toward the main hall, where he faced Knight Commander named Igris the Bloodred, whose power was far above him. At that moment, Jinwoo could tell that Igris was a very tough opponent because he felt an intimidating aura that was so chilling. Jinwoo also felt pressure equivalent to what he felt when fighting for his life in the double dungeon. After that, Igris began the fight by attacking Jinwoo with his sword. With his immense power, Igris could knock down concrete pillars as easily as breaking twigs. Jinwoo appeared overwhelmed by Igris's swift and deadly attacks, as he could destroy the walls and floor in the hall with just a swing of his sword. Although he could match Igris's speed, Jinwoo struggled to penetrate the armor, especially since Igris could launch fatal attacks. However, Jinwoo decided to put away his dagger and attempt to fight Igris with his bare hands. Upon seeing that, Igris threw his swords and prepared to engage in a hand-to-hand fight with Jinwoo. Elsewhere, Mr. Go received a phone call from Choi, informing him that they would soon embark on a mission to Jeju Island. Choi wanted to thank Mr. Go for approving their mission, and Mr. Go advised Choi to be careful because Jeju Island was a dangerous zone that had yet to be conquered by anyone. Back to Jinwoo, who didn't expect Igris to swiftly knock him down with his bare hands. Igris then quickly slammed Jinwoo's body against the wall and mercilessly pounded him until the wall shattered. Fortunately, Jinwoo survived the attack thanks to the protective gear. Realizing that he couldn't match Igris's strength, Jinwoo attempted to increase his speed. However, his efforts seemed futile as Igris could easily catch him and pummel him, then throw Jinwoo's body from the center of the hall to the area of the king's throne. Shortly after, Igris approached the weakened Jinwoo sitting on the throne and prepared to kill him. Surprisingly, Jinwoo was still able to rise and resist because he was determined to become stronger for the people he cared about. With his unwavering determination, Jinwoo finally managed to defeat Igris the Bloodred. After defeating a tougher opponent, Jinwoo dramatically leveled up and received 1,500,000 gold coins. Additionally, Jinwoo obtained S-level protective gear and the Ruler's Hand Rune Stone. Jinwoo also acquired the Hearthstone, which he could use to instantly exit the dungeon. As Jinwoo realized that the mission was not over yet, at the same time, knights began to arrive through the gates appearing in the hall. Jinwoo was notified that the longer he resisted their attacks, the more points he would earn. After that, Jinwoo used his invisibility skill to hide his presence, but the magicians could detect his presence and destroy the barrier, leaving Jinwoo had no other choice but to fight them. Although Jinwoo still possesses special abilities to fight them, he cannot anticipate some attacks from the knights who manage to injure him and bring down the Hearthstone. With enemies constantly arriving and surrounding him, Jinwoo has no choice but to confront them in close combat. No matter what, Jinwoo refuses to surrender, as he is determined to grow stronger and reach the highest peak. However, this battle turns out to be a test of his mental fortitude, because during the fight, he suddenly hears the words of those who used to belittle him because he was a weak level E hunter. Jinwoo can even hear the voices of Kim and Juhee persuading him to give up. He can also hear his past self, who told him that he always pushed himself and took risks, even though he was weak. His other self even tells Jinwoo to stop fighting and be satisfied with his achievements because it's more than enough to prove to those who once underestimated him that he has become stronger than his former self. Although Jinwoo has become physically stronger and possesses some extraordinary abilities, his soul remains as weak as before, allowing him to be easily defeated by his enemies, while his other self continues to ask him to stop fighting and constantly calls himself weak. At the same time, the knights begin to relentlessly attack Jinwoo until they manage to bring him down. As the knights are about to kill Jinwoo, he suddenly receives a notification that he has not completed his daily quest, so he is transferred to the penalty zone as punishment. Although it's a punishment, for Jinwoo at the moment, it's fortunate because he can momentarily escape from the dungeon to recover his condition. Shortly after, Jinwoo manages to recover from his fatigue, but due to serious injuries, healing potions cannot heal him temporarily. He can only wait for his wounds to heal on their own, or level up so that the injuries can heal instantly. Surprisingly, Jinwoo managed to quickly complete his daily quest, and utilized the remaining time to prepare the equipment he would use to face the knights again. Jinwoo then chose the Night Killer Dagger to slaughter the knights and decided to use the Rune Stone, the Ruler's Hand, even though he did not yet know the power he would gain from it. When he returned to the dungeon, Jinwoo realized that the number of enemies had increased significantly, but this did not reduce his fighting spirit to defeat them. Although his attacks became more effective and deadly with the Night Killer, Jinwoo did not receive any notifications about point additions or leveling up, indicating that his attacks meant nothing. At that moment, Jinwoo finally realized that the knights appeared because of summoning magic performed by the mages, so he quickly launched an attack towards the mages hiding among the knights, which resulted in Jinwoo successfully killing several mages and destroying most of the knights who attacked him. But 3 remaining mages summoned a golem to overwhelm Jinwoo. With his immense power, Jinwoo finally managed to defeat the mages and shatter the golem into pieces. After successfully completing the mission, Jinwoo received a notification that the system was analyzing player behavior in the job change quest and would provide a profession that matched player preferences. According to the system, wherever Jinwoo went, the Reaper would follow his steps because Jinwoo's path was always filled with death. Moreover, the system also analyzed Jinwoo's behavior, noting that he craved great power and blazed his own trail without relying on others. Jinwoo's thirst for strength also summoned the ghosts that roamed the Valley of Death, and the ghosts summoned by the Shadow Army would follow his orders as the Shadow Army and clear the way only for the player. Therefore, the system determined that the profession suitable for Jinwoo was a necromancer. At that moment, Jinwoo was extremely surprised to learn that his profession was a necromancer because he thought he had hardly ever improved his intelligence. Not only that, but necromancer was a magic-type profession that could summon eternal magic beasts to fight, while Jinwoo was a killer-type hunter who had a close combat fighting style and only focused on increasing physical strength and combat abilities. Jinwoo thought that all the abilities he had developed so far would be in vain if he accepted the system's decision to become a necromancer because necromancer was a backline profession. After that, Jinwoo immediately rejected the profession, but the system informed him that necromancer was the hidden class and urged Jinwoo to reconsider his choice. As Jinwoo was contemplating his choice for the second time, he suddenly remembered the summoning magic performed by the mages, where he assumed that necromancer must have abilities similar to the mages, which could control objects to attack opponents. Unlike the mages who lacked combat abilities, Jinwoo had considerable combat skills. Jinwoo then decided to accept the job as a necromancer, especially since there were no rules prohibiting necromancers from fighting on the front lines. Moreover, he could also use necromancer abilities in desperate situations where he could not fight on the front lines. Jinwoo assumed that he might be able to increase the combat strength of the Shadow Army with necromancer, which indicated that not only his own strength could increase, but also all the soldiers and knights in the Shadow Army. After that, Jinwoo received so many rewards and achievements after accepting the job as a necromancer, and he could also feel that his power increased drastically. But surprisingly, Jinwoo actually qualified to switch professions to become the Shadow Monarch and gained the ability of shadow extraction to create shadow soldiers by extracting mana. Not only that, Jinwoo could also summon the shadow soldiers anytime and store them if he did not need their power yet. Upon knowing this, Jinwoo looked excited because the ability was incredibly powerful, so he decided to extract the mana belonging to Igris, who had S-level strength. Even though he had to cancel the extraction of 11 shadow warriors due to limitations on the number of shadow warriors he could store in his storage. After that, Jinwoo tried to awaken Igris, but the first attempt failed, and Jinwoo only had 2 remaining chances to awaken the Knight Commander. Jinwoo also failed on the second attempt, so he touched on the subject of the king who would never return and Igris's feudal wait for him, while keeping the vacant throne. Jinwoo then told Igris that slashing enemies with his sword was his deepest desire, and Jinwoo was determined to let Igris fulfill his deepest desire. Therefore, Jinwoo asked Igris to protect and fight for him. Surprisingly, Jinwoo finally succeeded in awakening Igris, whose power level was far above the shadow soldiers. At the same time, Mr. Go appeared to tell Jinchul that he hoped someday someone full of hope and with unimaginable strength would emerge, and it was revealed that person was Jinwoo. Especially after Igris and the Shadow Knights knelt before him as if he were the ruler. Moral lesson from the story: always keep your helmet on, even if it's heavier than a sack of potatoes, because you never know when your enemies will kneel before your style.